What's up, everybody? I'm Uriel. You might have come across some software called Polypop, and you're thinking, this could add some uniqueness to my live streams, either on Twitch or YouTube. But you're not really sure how to make some more advanced follower alerts with some flair. If you're interested in doing something like that and finding an alert like this, follow along and I'll show you how. Start by putting the audio sources into their own group. I'll select both of them and hit Control G on the keyboard, and then double click on it and give it a proper name. Next, I'll add the rounded corners. The rounded corners one object. Press cancel. Go back in and grab the star screen object. Cancel again on the source select. This will be the core of the alert. I'm going to select the round screen and the star screen and group them together by hitting Control G. Double click on that group, give it a proper name, and now we'll be able to scale that up to an appropriate size for our follow alert. Planning to animate, I want the screen to swing from its top corner. Right now, though, it rotates dead center of the object. I'll double click the scroller to reset the Z rotation. I'll click the rounded corner source to get the properties and change the pivot point to min on X. I'm repositioning and checking the swing animation to see if it's the effect that we're after. Not quite. I really want it to swing from that top left corner, not from the very middle of the left-hand side. So I'll reset the rotation with double click. I'll go back to the properties and set the Y pivot to max, and then check the swing again. This is the effect we want. Some more positioning and another check on rotation. Yep, definitely the effect we want. Now the fun part, making it animate. With the star selected and our Twitch alert selected, we'll drag a wire out and up to begin an action sequence. A series of triggers that we can put in order for the overall final animation. We'll need at least 2 triggers in mid-alert for a zoom in and a zoom out of the star. We add a wait in between for a slight pause between the 2 states. The top emitter will be the state we want when activated or zoomed in, which happens to be the way it looks now. I find it easiest to begin from the finished look and work backwards. Odd, I know, but it'll make sense, just stick with me. Drag the wire over to the scale to set our zoomed in star. The second emit will be our zoomed out state. Scale the star to the near 0, can't set it to actual 0. Then drag the wire over to scale. This locks in that setting for the emitter. Now I'm going to test it out. I'll add a hotkey and assign it to F. Drag the hotkey trigger up to the action sequence. Now when we press F on the keyboard, we can see the star is doing what we wanted, zooming in and out, on a slight delay. We still have a small pixel-sized mark of the star on the screen. Since we can't scale it to absolute 0, we'll need to clean that up. Add another wait and emit. We'll use this to make the leftover blip invisible. Drag the trigger over the star visible toggle. Select set to off. Because we'll need that shown at the start of the alert, we'll also drag a wire from the top emitter to star visible and set to on. Testing with the hotkey. The vanish is a bit slow, so I'm going to set the timer a little bit lower. I'm going to pause for a moment. I should have done this earlier, but it's good to name all of your action sequence steps. It will help during the creation process, especially when you start adding in more steps, which we're about to do. Here you can see I've named the layers to make sense of them, and what they do in a top to bottom order that they're going to execute in. Now I want to get this panel animated. I'm going to start by adding emitters and weights. I'm going to give them names, so that I know the actions belong in what order. I want the panel to appear shortly after the star does, so I'll drag the zoom rotate in up in the stack order. I'll set a 5-second wait so the full object group stays on the screen long enough to read the follower message. That will eventually be on the rounded screen. I want the panel to zoom out slightly before the star, so I'll create those emitters and put them in the order for that effect. Now you can read from top to bottom and get an idea of how this is going to animate just from proper labeling. Now we'll wire up those new actions and then make this thing move. As with the start earlier, start with the final state. The way we see it now is how we want to see it when someone follows. So we'll set the rotation and scale here. Next, we'll rotate and scale the object to where we want it to end up when it zooms out. Then wire that up to the zoom rotate out action. A quick test with our hotkey, and it's looking pretty good. We have that same issue as with the star of a tiny little mark left behind when it's scaled down to near zero, so we're going to have to wire up the visibility like we did before at the start and end to make that vanish off screen. We want the star to show the Twitch profile pic of whoever triggered the alert, and it's super easy to add. We drag a wire from the start of the action sequence to the star texture and choose profile _ URL in the wire properties panel that pops up. One quick follow test and we can see that the test parrot picture appears. So now we know when an actual follower presses follow in our Twitch, we'll be able to see their profile picture here. What we want to do next then is to get working on the text that's going to display on that rounded panel. I'm just going to go over a little example here where I can show you that adding a regular plain 2D text isn't allowing us to choose that as a source for our 3D object. We also can't drag it down as a source in the 3D object. So if we go over and try 3D text, and attempting to do the same, we run into the same issues. 3D text also can't be added as a source to the 3D screen. So this is where we need to get a little bit trickier. I'm going to delete those from the scene. I'm going to name the current scene. I'm going to add a new scene. And this is just going to be for our follower text. I'm going to get rid of the microphone and desktop audio sounds, so we don't need those. And in here, I'm going to add a standard 2D text. I'm going to close the action sequence to get that out of our way. We're going to build out the 2D text that we want to show. If you're trying to avoid snapping on the edges, you can hold control and then you won't no longer snap to the edge. I want this to take up as much screen space as possible, and I'm going to add some basic text just for sizing and positioning purposes. Now back over on the main scene for Twitch Alert, I'm going to pull the action sequence back up. I'm going to drag the follower text onto the panel. It's currently being blocked by the star a little bit. And to keep things on the screen for a longer period of time so we can make adjustments, I'm going to set the wait time for the entire alert to 30 seconds. Go back over to the follower text and make slight adjustments to position it so it's not being blocked by the star. I'm going to move it up just a little bit so it's tucked into the armpit of the star. And now we can see it looks a little bit better in terms of alignment. Now the star is not showing a texture at the moment, and that's because I did a hotkey test and it didn't have it. But when we do an actual follower test, we'll see the parrot reappear. And I'll set the wait time back to 5 seconds, so this isn't sitting on the screen for too long. Then back on the follower text, I want to give it a little more pizzazz, a little more. So I'm going to set a mod for animate on startup. I'm going to choose type. And now when we click animate, the text types out. But when I do a follow test, I don't see that type animation happening. I need that text to animate. It's going to animate on update. So if I drag it from the new follower over to the text and update the wire properties to display username and the text that I want to show, then when we do a test follow, you start to see a glimpse of that being typed out, but the timing's a bit off. And that's because I'm kickstarting the text animation as soon as the follow is triggered instead of within the animation sequence. So I remove that wire, I come back up. I'm going to add additional emitter just to handle the text animation. So I add an emit alert, and I'll name this type text. I'll drag it up into position at the point in the sequence where I want this to type out. And then I'll drag that over to the text field, put in the username and the message I want displayed for that user. Now when we do a test follow, but the wait time between the panel appearing and the text typing is a little off. So I'm going to adjust that. And it turns out I don't need the wait time after all. I'm going to set the overall background to a lighter gray so that we can see the shadowing effects. But we also see that the panel is a little bit invisible. So I'm also going to change the background of that nested scene to some other color. We have a panel and typing text. One last slight adjustment. And that's looking a lot better. What I want to do now is get the full alert group in a final position. So I'm going to set the wait time for the total alert to 30 seconds to give me some time to work with the whole group. I'm going to grab that group and I'm going to start repositioning it. I'm going to look at different angles, different rotations. Ultimately, I think I want to put it up in the top right corner. So I'm going to drag it up there. And then I'm going to do some rotations to give it a slight angle in viewing. The scale's a bit large, so I'm going to scale it down as well. And anytime it disappears, I'll just re-trigger the follow alert to give me another 30 seconds to work with positioning. I'm going to move it forward along the z-axis to get it off of that background plane where it was cutting through. You might have noticed a line cutting right through the rounded panel. And now it also draws a larger casted shadow as well. The scale of 2 looks really good for this, so I think I'm going to leave it at that. Now that I've got the the position and rotation that I'm kind of looking for. I'm going to adjust the Z-axis so it's just off of the background plane. And then I'm going to go into the 3D scene. And I'm going to mess with the camera and lighting a little bit. That shadow is so far away from that. So I'll just light angle, zoom distances until I find the final effect that I'm looking for with the shadow. And this is really just a lot of tweaking for personal preferences. You can feel free to skip ahead to the next section. Ultimately, I think I decided on leaving the panel shadow off and just leaving the star shadow. I couldn't quite get the shadow positioning I was looking for, so I ultimately ended up turning those both off. Now, how to really make this come to life? We've got good animations started. We've got the positioning down. I think I want to add some particle effects to this animation. So I'm going to jump into the 3D. And I'm just going to grab one of the preset particles. Particles 2 I've used in a couple of other things, and I really like the foundation that it has. First thing I want to do is get rid of the random move. So I'm going to scroll down through its mods list. And I'm going to delete random move. Everything else I want to keep. The emit on move, the variance in colors, and the variance in size. Now what I'm going to do is add one other emitter that's going to attach it to the star. I'm going to move the particles down into the group just to keep everything together. And then I'm going to drag the star screen icon down. You'll know that it's working when you see the object blink. Now when I test follow, we see particles get emitted when the star zooms in. I'm going to change the action sequence timer for the full alert back to 5 seconds just to get a better idea of how that particle effect animation is going to look. After the star and the panel both appear, I think I want the entire group to spin around. I'll start by adding 2 emitters, one for spinning the group and another one for a wait timer. The wait timer is for right after the text is finished typing, then the entire group will spin. With the whole star group selected, I'll add a spin action modifier, and then I'll wire that spin up to the spin group action that I created in the action sequence. Now when I test it, the whole alert spins around at the end. I'm not real keen how it sort of slowly spins back into place. I'll hit the animation style drop down, and instead of an ease back in, let's try linear. Animation's a little bit slow for my taste. And I think I might want it to spin in reverse, and it's a little bit slow, so I'm going to lower the timer. This time I'm going to try a quadratic ease in and out. And that's a much smoother spin. But it's still too slow. And I think I kind of wanted to spin back the way it was originally. I'm going to close up the action sequence and deselect everything and give it one final test. So that's it. Hopefully it's been helpful. If you were able to recreate the alert as is or used some of my techniques that helped you build your own, that's awesome. Let me know in the comments what you liked, what you didn't like, if something needs clarity, or maybe a tutorial that you'd like to see made into a video, something you're trying to do in Polypop that you're struggling with. Also, come hang out in the Polypop Discord. I'm in there all the time. It's a good crowd in there. You can ask questions, get feedback, share ideas. I'll leave a link to the Polypop Discord in the description below. And thanks for all who stuck through the video and checking out my guide. Catch you next time.